Welcome, ladies and gents, my name is Curci, and today I wanted to talk about Sunset Overdrive and ask the question of, is it in fact Game of the Year? The game was just really enjoyable for me, from the jokes that just worked, from the gameplay that was just awesome. The weapons in the game were pretty badass, some worked better than others. The game was just really super enjoyable for me, even when I started it up and I was still in that, oh my god, I'm in a bad mood because Assassin's Creed Unity was so bad. But even when I was in that bad mood and starting to get into Sunset Overdrive, there were some jokes in there that were making me laugh. Honestly speaking, I've never really played a funny game before, but one game that did really make me laugh out loud was Saints Row 4. But not nearly as much as Sunset Overdrive was making me laugh. Because the thing about Sunset Overdrive is that it's a video game that knows it's a video game. I was a little worried about Sunset Overdrive going into it because I just didn't know what kind of game it was going to be. It looked like a cross between Infamous and Dead Rising. Infamous in the ways it was traversing the field, and then Dead Rising in the ways of how many enemies are on screen. Like, it's not to the extreme of Dead Rising 3 where it's just zombies as far as the eye can see, but it is a significant amount, and it just worried me because I was just like, what is this game about? Like, what's the hook for me? But after hearing other people play the game, they come back to me and they were like, Rick, this is a game you need to play just because it's just a great game. For me, story is a really strong element for me. I mean, is it the most important thing in a game? And no, and the perfect example of this is, in fact, Sunset Overdrive. The story of the game is basically that there's this energy drink called Overcharge, and basically everybody drinks it, and they turn into mutants. And then there's you. You're not anybody special. You're just a trash collector collecting trash, and then all of a sudden this apocalypse happens, and now you're one of the most important people ever. A lot of media, like movies and TV shows, kind of put highlight on this, where it's just an average person, like, oh, I just deliver pizzas, and now I'm this badass during the zombie apocalypse. It highlights people that are just normal people, but when the apocalypse starts, they become something different. They become a little bit more important. And this game touches on that. Like, you were a trash collector, now you're a guy who's grinding on rails, wall running, and bouncing off of things, shooting guns at massive amounts of enemies. I feel like the marketing for the game might have missed a spot because I had no idea that the game was going to be that heavy on the comedy aspect, which was actually one of the best things about the game. One of the reasons why I love Sunset Overdrive is because how much the jokes worked. It's all video game centric. There's one scene where you're talking to this girl and then somebody comes over and is talking to you through like some sort of earpiece or something, but they note that. They're like, wait, how are you talking to us if none of us are holding a cell phone? And it made me laugh. I was like, yeah, right? But it's just one of those accepted things that happens, and they just poke fun of it. Like, even respawning. Every time you respawn, at one point I hatched out of a dinosaur egg. One time I came up like a zombie out of a grave. It's just super entertaining, and then they also say that as well, where they like reference it. And then also when you get to the edge of the map, when you get to the border of the city, you get this invisible wall. Except it's not an invisible wall, it's like a grid kind of thing that actually just says invisible wall on it. And that's one of the reasons why I like the game so much, is because I'm a gamer and I get all the jokes. I mean, somebody who doesn't really play a lot of video games, they'll see the jokes and they'll be like, I don't get it. But this is a video game that knows it's a video game. It's also a video game that was made for gamers. But I talked a little bit about how the gameplay was really the focus of the game. Like, it was just so good. The bouncing on cars and grinding on the rails and shooting at things, it just works so well. Like, the game does it doesn't play for you, but the aiming does. Like, if you shoot at a guy, maybe the bullets will find its way to him. Like, if you're shooting in the general direction, like, obviously if I'm shooting over here and my target's over here, I'm not gonna hit him. But if I'm aiming here and my target's like right about there, maybe my bullets will hit him. I don't think that's a negative. I actually think that the game helps you out a little bit, because the game teaches you early on that you need to stay on the move. You need to be grinding, you need to be bouncing, you need to be wall running, you need to be doing all those things in order to build up your style meter so that you can activate your amps, which is something I will talk about in a second. But as you're moving around and grinding, going really fast and jumping around, it's really hard to get that precise shot. And a lot of times, if the game wasn't going to help me out a little bit, I probably would miss a lot of my shots. In my opinion, I think it works in the game's favor because the game developers knew that this is how it had to be. I mean, if the game was like, okay, you have to get a precise shot on this guy, then, like I said, I would have missed a lot and it would have annoyed me a little bit. And that was the other thing too, was that the game never annoyed me. Every single player mission, every side quest, every challenge, every bonus little thing that I was doing in this game, it was just so enjoyable. If you lay out all the things that are in the open world of Sunset Overdrive and you number them up to the things you could do in Assassin's Creed Unity, I guess Assassin's Creed Unity has more stuff to do. But still, the reason why Sunset Overdrive's open world is a lot better is because it knows how to go about it. The things that you are doing are worth doing. It was another thing that I didn't like about Watch Dogs, was that Watch Dogs had a fair amount of extra things to do, but it didn't really feel like all that rewarding. In one of the side quests of Watch Dogs, there's a mission to break the human trafficking ring, and I fully expected that I was going to be like hunting down gang members, actually saving individual people and getting them and being like, hey, yeah, I saved your life. But what actually happened was that I was going around hacking into this person's phone call to figure out where a brief briefcase was, then hacking into a camera so I could hack into the briefcase. Then after I did that, it was just like, well, good job. And then you do that so many times, and then at the last one, you get like a special mission where it's just like, all right, you need to kill this one dude. And then after you kill that one dude, it's like, congratulations, you broke the ring. And I'm like, I guess? Which was the same effect that I had with Assassin's Creed Unity, was that a lot of its missions didn't really feel like all that impactful. I was like, okay, I played it, nothing really special happened, so I don't want to continue playing it. Sunset Overdrive is completely different because every side quest was just in its own little way enjoyable. Like, is it hilarious? Not every time. But there was one mission where I had to go and I had to find these bags, and the guy was like, look, this is hugely important. Those are essential stuff that we need in order to survive. But then I open up the bags and it's like, oh, it's body spray. Do you really need this stuff? It made me laugh because it was just, the game knows how to be funny, and it's funny. And then there were challenges. There were several different challenges, but at the end of each, you see that it compares your time against some people on your friends list. Then it becomes super competitive because in my head, I'm like, okay, I see that he's there. He beat me by a couple of seconds. I can beat him. And then it just has me keep playing it because the competitive side of me was just feeding into the gameplay. Then there are random events as you're going around, you see somebody running on the street, and then you're like, I can help that person because I like shooting things. Then you go down there and you shoot them and you save the person, they give you some rewards, and then boom, there you go. Even the collectibles in the game, I had to go out of my way to get, because as you start building up amps, like I said, we were eventually going to talk about it, but in order for you to create amps, which are like power-ups, you need to collect collectibles. You need to collect balloons, you need to collect neon signs, you need to collect stinky shoes on wires. And every time I saw it in the distance, I was like, oh! And I had to go there to get it. Everything about the game, about its open world, I had to go out of my way to be a part of it, just to continue doing it. Even after I beat the game, on my desk was sitting Far Cry 4. All I had to do was write the review, make all my videos, and then boom, I was going to be done. But instead, I was like, I can play a little bit more. And then I continued to play more of the game. And it's not even the multiplayer. It was just running around shooting at things. I just like to kill things. You get introduced to several different enemies. Like, there are the OD, which are the overcharged drinkers, which are the mutants. And then you have the scabs, which are like survivors. Like, they're scavengers, and then they use guns and stuff. And then there are the fizzbots. The fizzbots are basically these robots. They're like the security force. They're almost like the villain of the game. Each of them behaves differently. Each of them has their own set of different enemy types within them. And it just worked because it was just like, when I'm fighting against the OD, I have to have a certain strategy. When I'm fighting against the fizzbots, I need to have a certain strategy. When I'm fighting against the scabs, I need to have a specific strategy. The game wasn't just having me grind on things and just shoot at things mindlessly. I had to also think, like, you had to also be smart. You had to plan out your routes. It was like, when I jump off this building, I need to hit that car, and then I need to kill these guys. The game makes you think, basically. You're always going to get points from me when the game is making you have a little bit of challenge. But then the amps, they're also enjoyable. Like I said before, the amps are power-ups. You can equip them to your weapons, you can equip them to yourself. As you build up your style meter, you'll start to enable different kinds of amps. One of them is like, if you swing your weapon, it'll fire fireballs. If you jump up and dive back down like a dive bomb, it'll create like a shockwave that'll go forward. There's even an announcer that you can equip, and when you level it up, it's just like, as you kill things, it'll be like, awesome! I was on the multiplayer playing with friends, and then I did something really cool, and I heard the announcer just go, holy sh**! And then I was done. I was crying because I was laughing so hard. In order to create new amps, you got to talk to this guy, Floyd. Floyd is fantastic. I just love his dialogue. He just comes in through the phone and he just goes, oh, we need to do this because, technology and stuff. That's not even a joke. That's legitimately some of the stuff that he says. Like, he just has trouble sounding smart. Like, he is smart. He just wants to sound smart, but he doesn't know the right words for it. So in the middle of it, he's just like, screw it. I don't know. Just blow things up. Floyd is just one of the perfect examples of why the characters in the game are so awesome. As you play, you're going to meet with other different groups of survivors, and every single one of those groups of survivors has a tremendous amount of enjoyment. There's one section in the game where you meet up with LARPers. LARPers are live action role players. So they're sitting there, you walk in, and they're like, what if you do it here? Hardcore! I love hardcore. Hardcore is awesome. But just the characters in the game were just really well designed. They played on that level of awesome that this game had. But going back to the amps, you talk to Floyd, and this will launch the process of creating new amps, which will launch a game mode that is sort of like a tower defense thing. You basically have to defend like this overcharged vat. If I were to describe creating amps as like cake making, the amp is your cake, the stinky shoes and all the collectibles, they're like your ingredients. The vat is like the oven. And you gotta defend it while it cooks. But then you can set up traps and stuff, and then you can like grind on rails. There are barricades in there so that when the OD come in, and they come in, they have like huge amounts of them. Then you gotta just sit there and just start blowing things up. And it was at this point when I was playing on the multiplayer, which this game mode is in the multiplayer, I just started to realize having 8 players on screen, all firing their weapons, all those weapons kicking off different particles and stuff, all the enemies sitting there, the game never once dropped a frame. It never once lagged. And after playing Assassin's Creed Unity, a technically broken game, jumping into Sunset Overdrive, a completely technically sound game, it was just so nice to play a game that worked for once. But even that mode in general, like it just throws waves at you. When you're playing in the single player, it gives you a time limit. When you're playing on the multiplayer, it does it in waves. When you're in that game mode and you're killing all the OD, your style meter is building up pretty quickly, so then your epic amp activates. The epic amp does something, for lack of a better phrase, epic. It has like explosions, like fire bursting out from the ground, but you can also have like thunder coming down. The game is just so enjoyable. I touched a little bit on the multiplayer, so let's talk about that next. The multiplayer is also just really fun. Like, it's really drawn out. Like, you have 8 people. They're all doing like these different objectives, like these different little side missions. Like, one, it'll just be like collecting supplies, bringing it to the boat. In another, it'll just be like, okay, destroy this base right here. In one, it'll be like, okay, clear out the area. And then that's just the way that it goes. For the most part, they're cooperative. Like, you all have one objective. You're all going to help each other out to complete this objective. But in the back of your head, you're like, I just got to outperform everybody else. I got to get the most points. I got to get the most kills, or I got to get the most deliveries with the supplies. I got to score the most. And then basically, as you play through each of those individual missions, that total score starts to tally up, which is what you're going to want to do, because at the end of that like tower defense wave thing, which is what you're going to get like the most points from, at the end you're going to start getting your rewards, and the more points you get, the more rewards you get. In between each of those missions, the game sets a waypoint, and then all of a sudden it becomes a race. And I can't tell you how many times I was playing with friends, just racing and being like, oh yeah, I'm going to get first, land there at the exact same time as my buddy did, but I get second. Then there's that moment of like, oh, but then you're laughing in the back of your head, and the other, it's just so hilarious. It's just so fun. I won't say I would never had, but I will say that this is the most fun I've had in a video game in a long time. We'll talk about Titanfall for a second, because I love Titanfall. People know I love Titanfall. I've done so many videos in Titanfall. As well made as Titanfall is, the game does have a bit of frustration to it, where you're like so close to doing something, or you're getting killed a lot, or you're losing a lot. I never felt that with Sunset Overdrive. It was no matter how bad I did or how good I did, I was having the same amount of fun. And then obviously when you play with friends, the game gets to a monumental level of fun. Even when you play with random people, the game's still enjoyable, and that's different from me, because I'm like, I really don't like playing with other people, because other people on the internet are jerks. But with Sunset Overdrive, everybody's having fun, which means I'm having fun, which means that this game is awesome. There was one moment where the game had a single technical hiccup, and that was during one of the story missions where the game just prevented me from turning the mission in. Normally that would be like, crap, I gotta play this whole thing over again. But in my head, I'm like, the section that I just played was the best section in the game so far. I want to do it again, and I'm totally okay with doing it again. So I reloaded the checkpoint, I started the mission over from the first portion, and I just had a tremendous amount of fun, even more fun than I did the first time. Like I said, the mission it was just the best mission in the game. I won't spoil what it is about. I will tell you so that when you go play it, you know what I'm talking about. It does involve a sword. When you hit that point, you're gonna know what I'm talking about, but it's awesome. But looking back, I'm thinking to myself, like, even when the game had a technical issue, I found enjoyment out of it. There was never a moment where I got frustrated while I was playing Sunset Overdrive. I was constantly laughing, constantly having fun, constantly getting distracted at the things you could do, which meant that everything worked for me. The game didn't really have a stellar story, but it didn't matter because I didn't care about the story in this game. Sunset Overdrive didn't need a good story because it had so many other things that I found enjoyment out of. For that reason, that's why these two games are bad for me. Because Destiny is a game that doesn't have a good story, but everything else in the game was so repetitive and so annoying, and I wasn't having fun with it. With Assassin's Creed Unity, the same issue. I wasn't having fun with the game when not in the story, and the story was also boring. And that's my point, is that Sunset Overdrive understands that it's about the gameplay. It's about the things that you do with the gameplay. Sure, I may value story a lot higher than a lot of other people, but Sunset Overdrive is a game that is a perfect example of you don't need story to win me over. Just have good gameplay. Just have a fun game for me to play and lose myself in it. So much of the game worked for me. I can't think of anything seriously negative about it. I can think of certain things negative about Titanfall, unfortunately, as much as I love the game. So for that reason, is Sunset Overdrive a Game of the Year contender? Absolutely. For me right now, it's the best game I've played all year. Keeping in mind, there are a lot of games I still haven't played. I haven't played Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor. I haven't played The Evil Within. I haven't played Dragon Age Inquisition. And I haven't finished Far Cry 4. So will one of those games take the spot away from Sunset Overdrive for me? Maybe. But I still wholeheartedly believe that Sunset Overdrive is in fact one of the games to look at when you start talking about Game of the Year. If you want to play a game that's a little bit more serious, maybe play Far Cry 4. But if you just want to play a fun video game, play Sunset Overdrive. You will thank me for it later. You're welcome. With that said, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.